Hello, I'm Cathy Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, as France gears up for a presidential election with National Front candidate Marine Le Pen leading in the polls, we ask what attracts women to the far right, both here in France but also elsewhere. And a documentary about a young girl training to be an eagle hunter in Mongolia is released here in France, but questions are being asked as to whether parts of the film were indeed staged. But first, we are just days away from the French presidential election. It's been a campaign unlike any other. Much of the focus being on whether the far-right National Front Party and its candidate, Marine Le Pen, could indeed make it to the Elysee or the presidential palace. And as with Donald Trump's campaign to become US president, Le Pen is heavily relying on attracting women voters. So why are women throwing their support behind such candidates whose political parties are far from being renowned for supporting women's rights? Joining me to discuss this today is French feminist and founder of a women's rights group here in France, Les Glorieuses, Rebecca Amsellem, and also American journalist and author Cathy Young, who recently penned a piece for foreignpolicy.com on exactly this subject. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Rebecca, as a French woman, explain to me, what is the attraction of Marine Le Pen to women?
To be honest, I don't really know, but what I know is that a couple of years ago, Marine Le Pen started to woo with female electorate because she understood that to be elected, she needed more women to vote for her. And so she started to talk about women's rights, even though she had actually never done this before. She started with the mass sexual assault, in Germany during New Year's Eve 2016. And she said that, for instance, immigration was a threat to women's rights. So she didn't become an advocate of women's rights. She just decided to use this issue to push her own agenda.
Cathy, this is not so much as a women power scenario many feminists would have predicted or wanted, where far-right parties are increasingly attracting the female vote.
Yes, it's definitely a new phenomenon. In Europe, traditionally, far-right parties have skewed very male in their vote. But what we're seeing today is that both the voters and, in many cases, the leadership, we're seeing this with Marine Le Pen. We're also seeing this with Frauke Petry in Germany. So this is a new phenomenon in a way. This is the sort of the rise of the right-wing woman, you might say. And in France, certainly, we have seen in recent polls, it's really been kind of neck to neck between men and women in the support for Marine Le Pen.
But I want to ask you, isn't this what equality is all about? We can't pick and choose the outcome, can we?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I think really the idea that women's politics somehow are going to be kinder and gentler than those of men really in a way is kind of sexist. I think when women are involved in politics as much as men, some of them are going to do it in ways that feminists don't necessarily like.
Rebecca, what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that as a feminist and as a woman, I surely want more women to be elected and to be our representatives, because I'm sure then once we reach equality at the parliament, in politics in general, women's rights will be really taken into account when it comes to making a decision. What I don't want is that I don't want for the first female president that could be actually against women's rights, because she is dangerous for women's rights, especially since we actually saw what she did in her previous terms, and she was really a danger to women's rights development in Europe, for instance.
But Rebecca, the National Front and also the Alternative for Deutschland, which is the equivalent far-right party in Germany, they are clearly attracting women voters. So what is going wrong here from your perspective as a feminist? Because again, these are parties who are not known for female-friendly policies.
I would say that it's just an issue of information. I think that maybe they should look at what they did when they had the power already, because they did. Marine Le Pen was, as I said, a European member of the parliament. But the Front National, the National Front, has representatives at the General Assembly here in France, and they also have local terms. And in each and every one of those terms, we have examples that the National Front is voting systematically against women's rights. For instance, in the Parisian region, the representative, Valrond Saint-Just, actually asked for public subsidies to be removed from the main gender equality organization.
Cathy, for your article, you interviewed a lot of women as to why they voted for Trump. What was the most surprising revelation?
Probably the most surprising thing was how many different reasons people had for voting for Trump. The women that I interviewed, they were definitely women who saw themselves as committed to women's rights. And they were able, in a variety of ways, to reconcile that with Trump's reputation for, saying and doing very sexist things. I also really came away surprised by how well they were able to articulate those reasons. I mean, these were really deeply held positions in many cases.
Has the women's movement failed in the sense that women's rights are not seen as being important or relevant? Cathy, what would you say to that?
Oh, no, I certainly wouldn't say that the women's movement failed. I think that women have different visions of women's rights. I mean, I thought it was interesting when Rebecca mentioned the National Front deputies voting against subsidies to a gender equality organization. That may not necessarily be what many women see as important to them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't see themselves as supporting women's rights. There are many women in the United States who do not call themselves feminists, for instance, but if you ask them whether women should have equal rights in the workplace, in education, etc., they will definitely say yes. And I think in a way, it is, again, kind of a sign of progress to me that even conservative and right-wing organizations do now have women in key roles. In a way, this is progress. This is a sort of perverse victory for the women's movement, you might say.
Rebecca, would you see that as such? Would you see it as Cathy just said, a perverse victory for the women's movement?
I would say that we are at a point in the feminist movement in which we acknowledge the fact that there's a various number of different groups who are advocating for women and who are not necessarily agreeing on all the issues. And that's not a problem. I really think that this is our job as feminist activists to tell those women who are being wooed right now by the National Front, to tell them that this is a dangerous political party for their own rights, and remind them, what they did before and what they are going to do if they get elected.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank my two guests, that of course being Cathy Young in New York and Rebecca Amsellem here in Paris. Now, on the face of it, The Eagle Huntress is a heartwarming documentary that tells the story of a nomadic girl in Mongolia who defies tradition to learn to hunt on horseback with a golden eagle. But some critics have accused the film of staging scenes and claiming the girl power narrative is less black and white as the director might have us believe. Haxie Myers-Belkin has the story.
She's 13 years old. She's strong. She's brave. And she's a total natural.
The Eagle Huntress is a documentary that tells the story of a young Kazakh nomad girl. With her father's encouragement, Aishulpan defies social norms to become an eagle hunting master, working alongside her very own golden eagle to catch foxes and wolves during the Mongolian winter. It's a practice reserved, we're told, for men.
I knew that traditional eagle hunting was for men. I didn't know any female eagle hunters, but I thought that could change.
Older men from her community disapprove. But that doesn't stop Aishelpan training for a prestigious eagle hunting competition.
She was really turning tradition on its head. She was the first girl to take part in that competition, the first girl in centuries of the practice.
But a number of critics have questioned the film's claims to authenticity, with many convinced that certain scenes were staged. Also under fire, the film's insistence on the groundbreaking feminism of Aishelpan's achievement. One American historian has said the film simply ignores the existence of other Kazakh eagle huntresses and willfully exaggerates the patriarchal pressures placed on our heroine. One Australian paper goes so far as to accuse the film of being a fantasy for Western eyes, constructed from Western prejudice about primitive peoples. Director Otto Bell denies it all, insisting that everything we see in his film is authentic. So is The Eagle Huntress an uplifting tale of female empowerment, or a misleading and Orientalist fiction? The truth may lie somewhere in between.
And that's it for now. And if you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page, that's France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and please do keep those comments coming in. Now, before we go, as some of you may remember, we were recently in New York where we visited the Fearless Girl statue. It's an artistic reminder to have more women on American company boards. Now, the bronze sculpture of a tiny girl staring defiantly at nearby Wall Street's Charging Bull statue has in fact become a hot tourism attraction. But not everybody is happy. The man who created the Charging Bull artwork is now complaining about the decision to allow the little girl to remain in place. The sculptor says her presence changes the artistic meaning of his famous statue. In response, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio has tweeted, "Men who don't like women taking up space are exactly why we need the Fearless Girl." We're going to leave you with more images of the artwork so you can see for yourself. Until our next show, bye for now.